due during the month of May, so this extra special meeting is to take care of them, to bring us right up to date. So we only have 3 items actually, 2 public hearings, I'm sorry, and 1 third reading. Before we get into the agenda, if it's okay with the common clerk, I just want to say on behalf of council and all of the city staff, because we weren't able to do this at a previous meeting, that our thoughts and prayers are with the family members and friends of the passing of Pat Dara, who passed away last week. Pat was a wonderful and loyal St. Johner, and he was involved in so many volunteer organizations and projects in this city. And I can very safely say that he got involved in community activities and big projects and small projects throughout the city. And he had for many, many years, and he wanted to make sure that the city of St. John was a great place to live and work for everyone in this city. And he actually dedicated his life, though he still spent lots of time with his family. And of course, he was the CEO of the St. John Construction Organization, but also he did so much volunteer work in the city. And as I said, worked on so many projects that he certainly made the city of St. John a better place for all of us. And we appreciated that so much. And I know that going forward in the years to come, he'll be greatly missed by so many. So I just wanted to put that note out there on behalf of all of us and on behalf of all of our city staff, because many of our staff people knew Pat Dara as well. So thank you. Common Clerk, do you want to go on to the next item?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. Just wondering, have you called the meeting to order?
Oh, well, I'm going to I will call the meeting to order. I probably should have done that before I made the little speech on Mr. Dara, but it's okay. Okay, call the meeting to order and go ahead with the next item.
So, Deputy Mayor, the first item is to approve the agenda.
Okay, can I have somebody move the approval of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Hickey and seconded by Councillor Reardon. On that question, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried. Okay, next item.
Deputy Mayor, next item is disclosures of conflict of interest, if there are any.
I don't see any hands, so I assume there isn't any. I don't think there's any members in any conflict tonight. So moving ahead.
Next item, Deputy Mayor, members' comments.
Okay, does anyone have anything they want to say that's not an issue of business, just a nice comment about whatever? If you do, please raise your hands. If not, we'll move forward. We're a little bit early, so but we can move to one of the items that doesn't have to wait until 6:30. So I don't see anybody's hand, and so we will move on. I think, Common Clerk, we could move to item number 10, because that's a third reading.
That's correct, Deputy Mayor. So on your agenda, item 10.1 is a zoning bylaw amendment with section 59 conditions for 191 Redhead Road.
Okay, the first is I need someone to move the third reading in entirely. Do I have somebody? Councillor McKenzie moved and seconded by Councillor Hickey. Okay, on that question, any questions? If not, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Common Clerk, you need to read.
Yes, this is a law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John, be it enacted by the City of St. John in Common Council convened as follows. The zoning bylaw of the City of St. John, enacted on the 15th day of December 2014, is amended by amending Schedule A, the zoning map of the City of St. John, by rezoning a parcel of land having an area of approximately 6,574 square meters located at 191 Redhead Road also identified as being PID number 00344-929, from rural residential to rural general commercial, pursuant to a resolution adopted by Common Council under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act.
Thank you. Now I need a motion to approve the Section 59 amendment. Moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Casey. On that question, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. And the next is we need a motion for the third reading by title. Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Casey. On that question, third reading by title, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried. Common Clerk, you wish to read?
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Thank you very much. Now it's 6:21. We're supposed to wait. We got 9 minutes actually, but we can probably start a little bit early because if anybody wished to speak at this public hearing, they had to contact the Common Clerk's office to get permission to do that. We have to have their names ahead of time because we're doing this by WebEx. So we have for the first presentation, which will be on 10 to 36 Arlington Crescent. For that public hearing, we do have registered speakers, John Rocca and Brian Irving. So do you think we can perhaps start that, Common Clerk? If you read it out and then...
Deputy Mayor, I see that the applicant still is not online for that, so I would suggest we have a brief pause until 6:30 just to ensure that the applicant has time.
Okay, so
So maybe a recess, Deputy Mayor, would be appropriate for 5 minutes.
Yes, we got exactly, it's 6 minutes. I'm 6:24, so we'll take a recess if you don't mind for 6 minutes, if you can just stand by, and we'll be back at that time for the first public hearing. Thank you. Okay, I think we're all ready now. So I'll hand it back to the common clerk to read the first item, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Item 9.1 on your agenda is under our public hearing, and this is for a proposed Section 59 amendment for 10 to 36 Arlington Crescent. There's a PAC report in this package recommending the amendment, and there's a staff presentation as well. Ask Deputy Commissioner Ouellette to introduce the planning team.
Okay, so I'll hand it over to staff, to the Deputy Commissioner, Ville Ouellette. Ville, are you on?
I am. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you to members of council, good evening. The first public hearing item is for a Section 59 amendment, which would remove conditions limiting the form of development on the site. This would enable an apartment building instead of townhouses. It is a major development on a primary corridor adjacent to the UNB SJ Plateau intensification area located within the PDA. I'd like to introduce Andrew Reed, who is a planner with the Growth and Community Development Services area, to present the item and to answer any questions you may have. Andrew.
Thank you.
Good evening. Give me a minute to share my presentation with you. The application is to enable a proposed 5-story, 89-unit multiple residential building off Arlington Crescent in Milledgeville. The site is highlighted in yellow and is part of the remaining undeveloped lands in the Arlington Crescent neighborhood. The site has sat vacant since 2009 when much of the clearing and grading work was done. And in red, you'll see the remaining undeveloped lands in the neighborhood. The site is adjacent to parkland off University Avenue, which is held in trust by the city, as well as the other undeveloped land of the neighborhood and the Canadian Blood Services parking lot. This is a photo of the site from the head of Arlington Crescent facing the Hospital University complex. The phase 1 portion of the Arlington right-of-way has been completed with sidewalk on the opposite side of the street. This is a view of the site towards the terminus of Arlington Crescent. This is a photo from the rear yard. Just by way of measurement, front of the property line is about 110 meters from the closest townhouse residence, which has been developed in the neighborhood. The neighborhood consists of a mix of housing forms. There have been 14 townhouses completed in a 24-unit condo building. In terms of the municipal plan, the site is designated stable residential, which supports a variety of densities and housing forms. The proposal is compatible with policy LU88 of the municipal plan, which details criteria for new development in terms of its positive contribution to the neighborhood, compatibility with surrounding uses, necessary services, transit, site design features, urban design, and its location off a primary corridor, University Avenue. Policy MS20 addresses wastewater collection system capacity. I would mention that there are known infrastructure limitations in the University Avenue area. And for this reason, we've set out conditions in the recommendation as part of this Section 59 amendment to address these limitations. This policy makes approval of new development contingent upon capacity in the system. In terms of zoning, the property is zoned mid-rise residential. And so with these amendments, the purpose is to ensure adequate sanitary servicing of the proposal. The following conditions are recommended. So these conditions, it's important to note, impact not only the site in terms of setting a ceiling for the number of units at 89, but also place limitations on the adjacent undeveloped land. It's equally important to note that the owner of these lands, Timberstone Development Inc., has been engaged throughout this process, are aware of the conditions, and are in agreement as per the letter attached to this council package. These limiting conditions are intended to provide further time for analysis to be done in the area while allowing the developer to proceed. Once the results are known from this testing, which our infrastructure department could speak to in more detail, further improvements to increase servicing in the area can be considered. In terms of public engagement, a letter was mailed out to neighbors within 100 meters, notifying them of the proposal on May 8th. We received 5 letters in response, 3 in favor, none indicating opposition to the proposal. The proposal was advertised on the city's website on May 26th, and the PAC meeting was held on May 20th. There was 1 resident in attendance. The committee did note a concern regarding the provision of adequate visitor parking on site, but otherwise supported the proposal. In terms of the proponent engagement, I know that the proponent had initially intended to hold an open house, but this was called off due to the state of emergency declared. The proponent did canvass the neighborhood with postcards on May 15th. And in terms of the visitor parking concern, we are aware that the proponent has a verbal agreement with the adjacent landowner to potentially purchase more lands for parking. And I would also note here that the zoning bylaw actually doesn't require or set out provisions for visitor parking, only tenant parking. The PAC recommendation was the same as staff's, and it's pursuant to the provisions of Section 59 of the Planning Act, impose the proposed conditions contained on page 3 of the staff report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Is there any questions from council to staff at this time? We haven't had the public hearing yet, or you can wait. If you wish, we can wait and do that after the public hearing. So if nobody has any questions, we'll commence the public hearing. And as I said in the beginning, but to say it again to the public, we normally ask 3 times for those against and 3 times for those in favor, but it's not necessary since we're doing it by WebEx. We already know that there's 2 speakers that we should speak in favor of, and we have no indication that there's anyone to speak against. They would have had to register with the common clerk prior to this meeting. So at this time, I would like to call upon the applicant, John Rocca, for your comments to council.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and members of council. I am the president of the applicant, and we are in agreement with the terms and conditions set out by staff and PAC, and we accept those recommendations. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on the project or about the project.
Okay, is there any questions to council? You have to put your hand up. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Deputy. John, this looks like a terrific project for that area. I'm just wondering, for the 89 units, how many spaces would you anticipate possibly for visitor parking in that other lot?
We now have an executed agreement of purchase and sale for the land, and I think that we can get anywhere between 15 and 25 parking spaces in the other parking site.
Oh, that sounds really good. Yeah, no, I wish you well on this. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor McKenzie. Any other questions from council? If not, we'll move on. Mr. Rocca, thank you very much for signing in tonight, and thank you for working on this project. I'll now call upon Brian Irving from Develop St. John. Brian Irving.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Common Council. My name is Brian Irving. I represent Develop St. John at tonight's meeting, and we are speaking in favor of this development by Mr. Rocca at Arlington Crescent.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Irving? If not, thank you again, Mr. Irving, and that will conclude our public hearing because, as I said, there's no other persons to speak tonight. So the motion that we need from council is for someone to move the PAC recommendation to adopt the Section 59 amendment. Moved by Councillor McKenzie. Do I have a seconder? I can't see anybody's hand.
I'll second it, Deputy Mayor. It's Councillor Hickey.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Hickey. All those in favor? I can't see everybody's hand, so you have to get in here.
It looks unanimous from my screen, Deputy.
Okay, anyone against? If not, the motion is carried. Common Clerk, thank you again for everyone coming in to speak. Common Clerk, next item, please.
Yes, Deputy Mayor, 9.2 on your council agenda is another public hearing, and it's a proposed municipal plan and zoning bylaw amendment. This is for 251 to 361 Riverview Drive. There is a PAC report recommending approval and also a staff presentation, and Deputy Commissioner Ouellette will introduce this.
Okay, Deputy Commissioner Phil Ouellette, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To members of council, this is an application for a municipal plan amendment and rezoning for an area of the city's west side near the St. John River. If approved, this will allow for a townhouse development that is complementary to the surrounding neighborhood. This particular development is located within the city's PDA. I would like to introduce Mark Reed, Senior Planner with the Growth and Community Development Service Area, to present on the item on behalf of staff and to take any questions that you may have. Mark.
Thank you, Phil.
There you are.
As Phil mentioned, this project is a rezoning and municipal plan amendment for the property at Riverview Drive. The applicant is proposing to develop 3 buildings containing 11 townhouse units. It requires a municipal plan amendment for a 2,734 square meter area and also a rezoning of the entire site. It also involves variances in subdivision, which are within the jurisdiction of staff being the development officer. This is an aerial view of the site here. It's along the shore of the harbor along Riverview Drive and on the north side. Highway 1 is off to the lower right of your screen. So if you're driving west across the thruway and look out off the passenger side of your vehicle, you can see it as you look towards Reversing Falls. This is the site plan. The applicant is proposing to construct 3 buildings. 2 of the buildings would be 4-unit townhouses and 1 would be a 3-unit townhouse. There would be 2 driveways that would access the site, and the majority of the 11 townhouse units would be accessed with garages from the rear. This is an elevation plan here. The upper portion of the plan shows a 2-story elevation that would be facing the harbor, and the lower sketch shows the Riverview Drive elevation. So it would be 1 story in Riverview Drive and then essentially a walkout basement on the back with a drive-in garage in the basement. Site photos. This is a picture of the site looking across from Reversing Falls at the lookout at the end of Douglas Avenue. The site's currently undeveloped. There's quite a substantial drop. It's about 12 meters higher than the water level along this section of the harbor. This is another site photo here looking towards the northwest from Riverview Drive. A good portion of the site is a fairly large plateau. And then when you move to the east along Riverview Drive, it drops off towards the water. This is another site here another view here along the edge of the bank. Again, you can see the steep drop off to the left of the photo. And then this is another view looking west towards one of the adjacent dwellings in the neighborhood. Future land use. The bulk of the front portion of the site is designated stable residential. However, some of the developed areas of the site towards the rear that would be developed with landscaping and the site access are designated park and natural area. So that triggers the municipal plan amendment. There's a steep slope along the harbor, but all of the developed areas will be above 12 meters above the water level. And also the development will be above peak flooding levels and projected sea level rise elevations. We circulated the application to the Provincial Department of Environment and Local Government, and there are not any watercourse alteration approvals required. Staff are of the opinion that the proposed development is consistent with the neighborhood context and meets the intent of the stable residential designation. The zoning of the site, there are currently some unzoned portions of existing and former street right-of-ways. A portion of it is zoned park, and those are 2 city-owned building lots, and the remainder of the site is zoned R2. The applicant is seeking a rezoning of the site to low-rise residential, which would allow for the townhouse units. The proposed development generally meets the standards of the low-rise residential zone. There are 3 development officer variances required for front, side yard, and minimum lot depths. And then the subdivision portion of the application would see a boundary adjustment to consolidate the site into 3 parcels that would be subdivided into individual townhouse units along the common walls of the units. In terms of public engagements, there were 2 website advertisements. The first was in February for the municipal plan amendment. The second was for tonight's public hearing. Staff issued a letter to area landowners informing them of the project on May the 8th. And there was 1 letter received expressing concerns, which was read into the record at the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. Staff's recommendation is to amend the municipal plan to redesignate a portion of the site from park and natural area to stable residential and to rezone the site to low-rise residential. Staff are recommending a Section 59 condition requiring the preparation of site and building elevation plans for development officer approval, and the PAC recommendation is the same as staff's recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reed. Is there any questions at this time from council?
Yes,
Councillor
Casey?
Casey, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. I mean, is this the best use of the land? I mean, considering that we used pictures of similar properties in our agenda packages about, devaluing property values with smokestacks in the back, and that's exactly what this is basically going to be.
From the townhouses?
Yeah. Yeah, take a picture of it.
Maybe that
Be a
question,
smokestack in the back.
yeah, maybe I'll do the public hearing first and then when the applicant comes forward, you could ask that question then. Would that be okay, Councillor Casey? Because I don't think there's anybody on staff that can answer that question. Okay?
Deputy, I just have a quick question. It's Councillor Hickey.
Councillor Hickey?
Thank you. Mark, just a quick question. And could you elaborate a little bit or offer a bit more insight in terms of environmental impacts or proximity to the river? I think the project's really solid. I guess I just wonder if there's any adverse impact there, if you wouldn't mind commenting. Thank you.
Yes, your Deputy Mayor, through you to the councillor, we did circulate the application to the Provincial Department of Environment and Local Government. And where this is basically essentially on the harbor side of the river, it's not far enough upstream where the watercourse alteration permits and 30-meter setbacks would kick in. What the Provincial Department of Environment recommended was just general good construction practices in terms of, silt fences, maintenance of the site, not having a large opened area of the site to manage siltation, just making sure soils are stabilized, equipment on the site's in good working order during the construction phase. There's also a fairly significant drop. It's a bit, it's the elevation is probably 12 meters and above the water level. So it's a fairly steep bank there. So it's, the water level is, quite far removed from the developed portion of the site.
Excellent. That's good to hear. I'm just curious. We just wanted to make sure there was no fill going into the water or anything like that. Nice to hear. Glad it seems like a really solid project. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Hickey, thank you. Councillor Armstrong, you have a question for staff?
No, just a statement if that's all right. I live right beside this piece of...
Just a minute, I can't hear you.
Can't hear me.
Right,
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
What's it? Can you repeat what you said?
Yes, I will repeat. I live right directly across from this piece of property. This is a well, I'm glad to see this being developed on Riverside here. Nothing's been built on that piece of property in 40 years. So it's great to see this development. The man that's doing has built all over the west side. He's a great contractor, and this is nowhere near the water unless you want to jump off a cliff. And that's what it is down there. It's all bush, but it's a great development. It'll bring property value. Just for Sean's note, it'll up the property value, I'm sure, of the land down there, Sean, because it used to be all fishing shack back when I was a kid. And now there's going to be a new housing development. So I think it's a plus and a win for the city and especially for the residents. That's my view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Armstrong. We'll now go into the public hearing, and since we're doing this by WebEx, we have 3 registered speakers. The first one will be Rick Turner, followed by Bill Shannon, followed by Brian Irving. So Mr. Turner. Mr. Turner is on somewhere.
Okay, am I on the air?
Yes, I can hear you.
Deputy Mayor, members of Common Council, Rick Turner with Hughes Surveys and Consultants. We've put together the proposal working with W&S Holdings, Mr. Bill Shannon. We're certainly in agreement with the staff report. Mr. Shannon has carried out a number of very successful projects similar to this, has been mentioned. Corner of Manchester Avenue and Manawagnish Road, Manawagnish Road at Fairville Boulevard, and the corner of Hillcrest Drive and Manawagnish Road West. Other developments as well, but those are the ones that are more similar to the built form that's proposed here. The development utilizes an existing street and services, and they are certainly strong components of the small growth or smart growth, which the municipal plan speaks to. The dwelling types are certainly consistent with the other built forms in the area. The project itself is probably a value of about $1 million when built out, probably over $1 million at that point. The property, low-rise residential, and there is a resident there that has some concerns about view, but what I would mention is the property is presently mostly zoned low or R2, which allows you up to a three-story building. What's proposed here is one level facing out towards Riverview Drive, 2 levels facing the water because of the walkout basements and garage areas. That's my presentation. Any questions? I certainly try to address them.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner. Is there any questions from council? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you again. Mr. Shannon.
Deputy Mayor, I see that Councillor Casey had raised his hand for a question.
I thought maybe it would be best for Councillor Casey to speak to the applicant unless you wish to speak to Mr. Turner. Councillor Casey,
Yeah, that's fine then.
you want to speak to Mr. Turner and ask your question, or you can?
Whoever the applicant is,
Well, we haven't got the applicant's Mr. Bill Shannon. He's coming up next to speak.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shannon? Is Mr. Shannon on the line?
Can you hear me?
Just have to speak a little bit louder, I think.
Okay. I just here to, if there's any questions, I agree with the staff report and the presentation that city along with Rick Turner did. So if there's any questions, I'd answer those if I could.
Okay, Mr. Shannon, we have a question from Councillor Sean Casey. Councillor Casey, you want to ask a question now?
Yes. I was just wondering about the road in the back and the parking in the back. That's pretty rare. Just wondering what the logic of that was.
Our development to put the cars off the street in garages. That model there works really well for tight areas, and I don't know. I've got about 26 of those built now, so it's I don't know what you mean by not common. It's
well, it's usually the garage is facing the street in the front.
No, they're in the back.
Yeah, they're only 1-story level. So if we did the 2 down on the lower end of the street where the street takes a dip, might have to move to the front. That would be on the 3rd phase, but on the first 2 phases, the garages would be in the back because we want to keep one level on the front. We don't want to overshadow anything that's across the street if we don't have to. There's a 2-story house directly across from my building, which the whole top floor will be able to look over my buildings and out into, without losing the view.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I don't, oh, Councillor, Mr. Reed, you have a question? Hello? Mark
My
Reed?
apologies. My apologies. I was on mute there earlier. Through you to the councillor, the design they're proposing basically responds to the topography of the site, where it's higher along Riverview Drive than it is at the rear, and that it's essentially it's a walkout basement design given the slope of the site. So staff are supportive of it. It responds well to the topography, and it's it's a good housing product, we feel, in a good location of the city to make use of a developed or an undeveloped service lot.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Our next speaker is Brian Irving, St. John.
Thank you again, Deputy Mayor and Common Council. Just speaking again in favor of this project. Very excited about this specific project. Much needed inventory on the west side where demand outstrips supply, and a quality project from a quality developer. So we're excited about this opportunity. Thank you.
Okay.
Deputy, I have a question. Donna?
I can't see everybody. I don't know why. Councillor Reard, who's your question?
I have a question for staff. I'm just wondering about the topography of the land. And when you build something like this, you create a cliff. It's coming quite close to the road to be back as far as possible, I guess. And I know the road is provincial, but what steps are being taken so that there's not I don't know, what will the drop be from the road down, and what steps are being taken to sort of mitigate that? Is it going to create a cliff in the backyard of that place? And what's going to hold the road back? Do we take on any liability once we approve the site, knowing the topography and the steepness of that area? Do we take on any liability with that?
Okay, just one before staff answer, I just want to make sure there's no further questions for any of the guests. Mr. Shannon or Mr. Turner or Mr. Irving. So our public hearing is over. So now we're on a question to staff. Okay, go ahead, staff. Mr. Reed?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, through you to the councillor, they would have to prepare essentially a site grading plan that the city would review. And one of those key elevations is the elevation of the road with respect to both the driveway accesses, foundation elevations, and then any of the low areas along the site. So that's an item that's basically designed by the proponent. It ties in with their stormwater management and site servicing. And that's typically evaluated by staff at the building permit stage.
So there won't be a cliff created there. Is that what I'm hearing? I ask because I look at a development on Exmouth where there is a cliff created that just was built. And so if we're with the slope of this, I'm just concerned about a cliff being created and people walking off. It's close. It'll be fairly close to the road, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they will be quite close to the road. I think they're roughly about 3 meters back, 3 meters off the road, if memory serves me correct. A lot of the elevation change would take place over the building. So you'd have basically, you could walk up a couple of steps to the main floor of the building or the upper floor, and then basically you would drop down to the basement. So a lot of that grade change, or, it wouldn't be like a straight drop off cliff. It would be 1 story, and then you'd go down into the basement of the house, and then you would have basically an access at grade in the back. So the site access would slope down to the driveway in the rear, but a lot of that grade change would occur over the basically the width of the dwelling unit.
So if I'm standing on the road, I'm not going to be like, my feet won't be level with the roof.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
The other question I have is when we get the stop development, stop applications. There's a staff portion right underneath location, and it says staff use, and it has heritage area, yes or no, intensification area, yes or no, flood risk area, yes or no, and approved grading plan, yes or no. Those are never filled out. It'd be nice, I guess, to have those circled one way or the other for us.
Okay. This one, it is not in an intensification area. It's in an area designated as stable residential in the plan. And it's outside of the heritage area and outside of the flood risk area.
An approved grading plan, what's that mean?
The approved grading plan, yeah, that will come with the building permit. That's typically a component of the project that's evaluated during the building permit and infrastructure permitting stages.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Reed. I'm going to ask, is there any other questions? Because I unfortunately can't see the counselors' faces. I don't know why. Any other questions? If not, we have 4 motions. The first motion I need is the first reading for a municipal plan. Moved by Councillor Merrithew, seconded by Councillor Reardon. On the question, if all those in favor? I only see 2 hands. Where's everybody else? Is everybody else still on? Okay. On the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. The second reading is the second reading for municipal plan.
Moved.
Deputy Mayor, I just have to read it into the record for the first reading.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just a procedural thing. So the first one is a law to amend the municipal plan bylaw.
Okay, thank you. So the second reading for municipal plan, moved by Councillor McKenzie, seconded by Councillor Merrithew. On that question, anybody? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Common Clerk?
Deputy Mayor, just to confirm for the record, I believe I saw a nay for Councillor Casey. Can we just confirm?
Was yours a nay? Yes.
Nay.
And was yours a nay for the municipal plan also? The last motion?
Yes.
So you voted nay for both motions, okay?
Yes.
On that question, okay, motion's carried. The next is I need a motion for first reading for rezoning.
And Deputy Mayor, I'm just going to read out the title again. On my apologies. That's a law to amend the municipal plan bylaw.
Okay, thank you. The first reading for rezoning, Councillor Merrithew moved and seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On that question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded?
Nay.
1 nay, all the others in favor. Common Clerk?
Law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay, our next motion and our final motion is a second reading for rezoning. Moved by Councillor Merrithew, seconded by Councillor McKenzie. On that question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded?
Nay.
Motion carried. Motion carried.
A law to amend the zoning bylaw of the City of St. John.
Okay. Well, that's the end of our meeting for tonight. Thank you for everyone. And we're now up to date with all our planning applications. So
Adjourn.
we'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Councillor Hickey. Anyone second it? Councillor Merrithew on the question. All those in favor? Good night, everybody, and have a pleasant evening. It's still sunny out. Bye.